Well, a very good morning to Trinidad and Tobago and to all our viewers around the world. This is Talking Point on the Content Capital, WESN. My name is Keaton Shaw, and once more we're grateful to have you along with us as we continue the conversations, hoping to have some level of progression in the developing stories of Trinidad and Tobago. It is March 7th, 2022. It's a brand new day. It's a bit cold and damp outside considering the weather. But for the most part, we're returning to a greater sense of normalcy as we were roughly 3 years ago with the Prime Minister's announcement in the lifting or the easing of some restrictions on Friday. And that is something that we will get into a bit later on. But this morning, there's a bit of a story that has me rather perplexed. Incredible to have been reading it, and we will discuss that shortly. That's in relation to gang members being granted bail. But the criminal justice system is rather confusing at times and very questionable, and so we will analyze that very shortly. But before we do, let me introduce my co-host, colleague, and good friend, Mr. Sean Michael Small. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Keaton. And to say that we are on the cusp of reaching normalcy is interesting given all that is happening globally. It is almost like if we are out of one frying pan and into another frying pan, and hopefully we don't jump into the fire with this one. But locally, with regards to what's going on with bail, I think we are now reached something of a crossroads with our criminal justice system, which has had many problems and I think many challenges faced by those who have tried to solve some of those problems facing the different institutions that make up the system. Now the recent effect, it's interesting. I'm not sure if we've had anything quite like it with regards to the granting of bail to murder accused and the implications of what it allows. Right now, we're in a bit of a no man's land almost because the Privy Council has not settled the matter, but it seems as though bail is moving forward.
For now it is, but it's intriguing that you stated a sense of normalcy globally when we take a look at what's taking place, jumping from COVID-19 into, well, arguably what we were before. It was man versus man, then it was man versus nature. Man versus nature. Within that period as well, you saw man versus man in terms of the entire vaccination drive, in terms of conspiracy theories, and then we're back to man versus man once more in terms of war, in terms of conflict, and it's no longer nature against man, it's now man against nature once more, and it's just, I suppose you can say it's a cycle, and they often say history repeats itself, and what we're seeing now is a repetition of what we would have witnessed before. Maybe not personally, but in the books of history it is written. But in relation to the story we're speaking about bail, it's about gang leader, or need I say alleged gang leader, Raji Ali, and 8 of his other alleged gang members, where they appeared via virtual trial and were granted bail on, I think this was on Friday. Now, in relation to this, they were awaiting the trial for the murder of Senior Counsel Dana Seatal, of which they are accused of. And this story, Sean, is extremely interesting. First of all, in being granted bail of various categories, various levels, they must surrender their passports and they must report to the nearest police station on a daily basis, right? So surrendering your passports is nothing new. Reporting to a police station on a daily basis, well, I suppose for the level of the crime involved, that's understood. Usually it's on a weekly basis or bi-weekly. But here's where the story is rather, it's frustrating and it's angry. The charges against the group in relation to the murder of Senior Counsel Dana Seatal were reinstated following a Court of Appeal decision in 2020 because in 2016, the state applied to have the charges amended, but this was denied by Senior Magistrate Indrani Sedeno in May of 2016 after the DPP's office admitted laying the charges indictly, which means to be laid by judge and jury or judge alone after preliminary inquiry, as opposed to summarily, which is to be heard and determined by a magistrate as for first offences as stated in the statute of the Anti-Gang Act. Now, this was actually reinstated following the appeal in 2020 in order to dismiss the gang charges, because it's being determined, the appeal court has asked to determine if a blunder by the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions in laying the gang charges resulted in the nullity. At the time it was argued the DPP's office could not relay the charges because the 6-month window to do so had expired. Again, a huge delay. 6 months is not enough in order for the DPP to get their work done. We understand that the DPP's office is severely short-staffed, but listen to the details. We go on further. In its decision, the appellate court judges said the charges were capable of amendment and were not affected by the 6-month limitation period set by the statute. So again, conflicting opinions in relation to the statute itself. It's conflicting whether or not the DPP could have laid it, and then the appeal court is stating, well, no, he could have laid it. And then further on, Ali's other brother, Ishmael, was denied bail as the court was unsure if his criminal record was updated.
Or unsure of his updated criminal record.
Right.
So, I mean, ironically, we have, you could say, two different issues here. One is the progression of this murder trial has already started off on a very unfortunate footing. And this is a very important murder trial, depending on if we could get to the truth, and it is proven to be true. You are looking at what is allegedly the assassination of a high-profile prosecutor who was going after serious white-collar crime. This is not a prosecutor that was trying to lock up somebody that, stole $500 from a jewelry store or shot a man in his foot or something like that, or two guys that had a fight. So this is an assassination of a senior counsel. It's interesting that we already have these sort of games being played or these sort of interesting technicalities being brought up, or you could even say if it is the fault of the state for making these procedural errors, because I would think that the members of the legal profession would be a little bit more motivated to at least cross their T's, dot their I's, or dot their T's and cross their I's, whichever way they have to do it, not make any sort of errors, right? Not look for whatever minor technicality to try to upend this whole thing, because a member of their fraternity was potentially murdered in cold blood for doing her job.
Well, it seems as though in this instance, Sean, they were crossing their I's and dotting their T's and not the other way as they should have. Because, first of all, it seems to have been a blunder on the part of the Office of the DPP in laying the charges initially. Then a senior magistrate in 2016 actually denied the charges, and then the state asked for the charges to be amended, and the appellate court has asked whether or not there was a blunder. It needs to be determined whether or not there was a blunder in relation to the office of the DPP. Now, the men have been granted bail, but here is where it's a bit tricky for me. In the last couple of weeks, we've been discussing bail for murder accused. And what the Commissioner of Police is asking, as well as the Attorney General, is that there should be no bail for murder accused. Where this is a bit sticky is that the mere fact that these individuals are gang members, or should I say alleged gang members, along with being murder accused, should they have been granted bail? That's what is difficult for me to determine, considering all factors.
The problem is, then you would have to charge them for being gang members under the Anti-Gang Act, or however that works. If being a gang member is illegal, you have to prove it. If that has no bail to that charge, that's fine, but that's not what they're charged for. So unfortunately, the AGA and the Acting Commissioner of Police needs to understand that you cannot play with, or you cannot compromise certain principles just because the system is not working. Your job is not to compromise principles in order to try to give us a band-aid over the problems. Your job is to help fix the problems. If you can't fix the problems, then you need to at least try to recommend somebody to take over your position to help fix the
Now,
problems.
Dana Sita was shot dead in her SUV on May 4th of 2014 in Woodbrook. The group shown were actually charged with being members of a gang. And they were charged with being members of a gang during the period of March 14th, 2014 to July 24th, 2015, because they were charged on July 25th of 2015. So the state then, when they charged them, determined that they were gang members for over a year.
Right, but again, so you could charge them with that. Maybe that charge does not have bail. I'm not an expert on criminal law. And then maybe you could keep them in. For whatever reason, that was not done in this case. It goes back to the fact that all but one got bail also speaks to the issue that we're going to have with all the cases. Could we get the paperwork done? Why are we using paperwork? Maybe we're not, but something tells me, I suspect that a good chunk of their criminal records are only recorded on paper. And heaven help us if one day those records rooms, because it's happened before, if they catch a fire, then what do we do?
Well, that's the thing. This is where his brother was actually denied bail because the court themselves were unsure whether or not his criminal record was updated. Updated criminal record or criminal record updated, it's more or less the same thing. And that, again, goes back to a big hole, a big gap in terms of our judicial system. And you can pass as much legislation as you want. I mean, this is where it's now confusing because they're allegedly members of a gang. They were initially charged with being members of a gang, and then they were charged for the murder of Dana Sita. They were accused. And as I'm saying, you pass as much legislation as you want.
What happened to those charges? Were they dismissed?
No, they weren't.
Were they proven?
They weren't dismissed. They were actually set to stand trial in 2020.
The other thing is, if the whole issue of bail for murder accused now affects what's the word? It affects the, well, isn't the anti-gang legislation, did it fail to pass recently to be reinstituted?
It was the Sunset Clause.
The Sunset Clause,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why that's not there. But the last thing I wanted to say about this is, unfortunately, when you think about the number that is estimated to be in remand for murder at around 1,200, I believe the AG said. Mm-hmm. When you consider the fact that we have 500 murders plus a year, in 3 years, that's already 1,500, right? Some of these guys have been there for 6 to 10 years. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at, I don't know, 4 times as many murders, don't even have an accused, potentially, waiting to go through trial that are being missed. And right now, our crime situation is not looking so hot. It slowed down between February and January, but still we're on our usual pace to have more than one murder day.
Now, here's the final part of this puzzle, again, which makes it very, very confusing. They were actually set to stand trial for the murder of Dana Cesar Hall in 2020. And being granted bail for being alleged gang members does not mean that they'll be released immediately, because even though they were granted bail for those charges, they are yet to actually apply for bail on the charges of being the murder accused of Dana Cesar Hall. So technically, they are still in remand. But this is what I'm saying. It is all confusing. It is extremely confusing.
Why would you
exactly it doesn't make sense, does
bail separately?
It doesn't make sense.
To have another bail hearing?
I don't know.
So okay.
But put it this way. Once more, yes, we understand COVID-19 took over, and we will be hearing the excuses of the pandemic for as long as we live. Trust me, I'm telling you, in 10 to 15 years' time, you're going to be hearing about the COVID-19 pandemic still. But nevertheless, again, how long is it going to take before this murder trial is set to take place? How long before we're going to see some sort of substance coming out of the criminal justice system? These gentlemen are alleged gang members. They've been granted bail. They're also murder accused. They have not been granted bail. They remain in remand. But with all this legislation and with all this talk about we need to get this done, this has to be done. We want gang members off the streets. We're cleaning up the system. We have to try and ensure that we have effective policing and strengthening our national security systems, and all that's in place. Ladies and gentlemen, read this story whenever you have time and then you'll see that it's just all fluff.
If you don't stop the drugs, then they will always be gang members. Is that simple?
Or if you don't cut the head off the snake can still live. Folks, let's take a break here on Talking Point. When we return, well, we shift the conversation to COVID-19 this morning. Stay tuned to Talking Point on WESN, the content capital.
Alexa, can you play my song, please?
Every day across Trinidad, Flow is connecting communities near and far. Our dedicated teams are always working to keep you connected to the world beyond your doorstep. Improving internet accessibility across Trinidad, one home at a time. At Flow, we work hard for you, so you work hard for your family on the largest high-speed network. Connecting you to more every day with Flow.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions. The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. If you're now joining us, well, it's a beautiful day. We're back out to work. COVID-19 restrictions have more or less been lifted, but there are still some things that bemuse us. This morning, we are exploring what the Prime Minister announced in Parliament last week Friday as those take effect, those easing of restrictions take effect from today. And, well, many people are happy, but many people are still concerned that enough was not lifted.
Yeah, so that's the thing, you know, when you say it's a beautiful day, I'm like, is it? Or is it like a halfway beautiful day?
I'm just being absolutely positive.
The sun is only shining, you know, like half of a sun. We all get half of a sun.
The sun was not even shining, but come on, we're trying to be positive and spread some level of cheer to those who are viewing.
I don't know, I mean, strange as it is, this does not make that much difference to me personally. So I just don't see the cheerfulness of it. I do think, though, it puts one interesting debate to bed, and it brings up the question of the whole matter, but we'll get into that.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are viewing Talking Point for the very first time, or if you've been with us over the last couple of months, you now notice the yin and the yang here on Talking Point. You know, we've got Mr. Pessimistic, who is probably the most realistic, and myself, who is probably sprinkling some sugar
young, idealistic dreamer. Okay, so and don't worry, life will. Well, let me not continue about that.
Yes, no philosophy.
Let's listen to what the Prime Minister did say and what he did open up, and then we could ask the question: what did he not open up?
In late December 2021, the WHO re-emphasized its recommendation to maintain mask use in the face of Omicron. As such, mask use will remain in force at this time in all public spaces and places where there is public interaction. Public transport will be allowed to return to 100% of capacity. Mask wearing will continue to be required in vehicles being used for public transport, including all vehicles in which persons are paying to be transported. Families will no longer be required to be masked in their vehicles. This change will also apply to marine vessels being used by families. We are removing restrictions with respect to the length of time and numerical capacity at religious places of worship. Mask wearing will continue to be required during services at religious places of worship. The number of persons permitted at graveside funeral services will be unrestricted, but mask wearing is mandatory for the time being. For unvaccinated nationals returning to Trinidad and Tobago, a reduction in the quarantine time would be applicable. Quarantine time will be reduced from 14 days to 7 days, with discharge taking place on the receipt of a negative PCR test on the 7th day. Madam Speaker, we will decrease the national quarantine time for contacts of positive cases from 14 days to 10 days. This would allow for increased productivity and a decrease in the likelihood of staffing shortages, especially amongst the essential services. Of note, the Ministry of Health recently reduced the isolation time for positive patients from 21 days in all categories to 10 days for persons with no symptoms and 13 days for those with moderate to severe disease. They will be discharged in accordance with the discretion of the county medical officers of health. Public gatherings of persons in groups of no more than 25 is now to be permissible. The recommencement of team sports and contact sports is allowed. We will allow the establishment that are currently allowed to operate as safe zones for vaccinated or exempted persons and children under the age of 12 to operate at 75% capacity. Provided that we do not have dangerous changes in the COVID-19 position, we will permit all children to return to physical schooling in term 3. The Ministry of Education will continue to put out the necessary guidelines to safely manage this process. As of Monday, 7th March 2022, the public service will return to full service and all public servants will be expected to return to work as normal. Additionally, Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Health will be presenting a national pathway for the consolidation of the public health service.
So the issue about schools has potentially technically been put to bed. It's just a matter of time. The issue of public sector employees having to be put on furlough, don't come to work if you're not vaccinated, all of that big hubbub, that seems to have also been very much for naught at this rate. However, we still have safe zones.
So, first of all, just to give you an update, the Minister of Health has indicated that effective from today, daycare centres can reopen and schools, secondary schools, will fully reopen. Primary school students of standard 5, well, they will return to school as normal. The rest will remain at home under the virtual setting. Now, let's get into this debate. Yes, great, wonderful. We were debating the wearing of masks within vehicles if you're family members, so that's been lifted.
Right.
Public transportation returns to 100% capacity.
Right.
You have to wear masks there. Yes, the public sector workplace vaccination policy seems to have been scrapped as all public servants now return to work today. That's great.
Or they're expected to actually return to work today. At least one sector has publicly questioned that still with the judiciary, ironically.
Well, yes, 2 judges have actually questioned that with the judiciary. But here's the 2 big questions for me. First of all, as you pointed out, safe zones remain. I'm not entirely sure why. Secondly, this workplace vaccination policy, which also goes into a second thing about our virtual vaccination cards, which 2 weeks ago we announced that it will be implemented soon.
We will have them a year after this whole pandemic is over.
But anyway, nevertheless, putting that aside, the government simply could not have gotten it done. It's simple. There is no other reason or no other excuse. 2 weeks ago, when the Prime Minister left for Doha, the Attorney General, the following day that the Prime Minister left, held a press conference and stated, the legislation is there and it will be laid in Parliament, but I cannot make any further announcements until the Prime Minister gets back to Trinidad and Tobago. The Prime Minister arrived last weekend. There was this entire incident in relation to the divers who lost their lives, but still, even in Parliament on Friday, the Prime Minister made no significant announcement in relation to that, except for the fact that all public servants are now back to work, which effectively, Sean, means that there seems to be no policy, because you would have made some sort of announcement in relation to what the Attorney General stated.
Now, what's interesting is, by keeping the safe zones, I was now going to say this will now bring into question private sectors, employers insisting that their employees be vaccinated. But the safe zones are still in effect. So what private sector businesses can still not reopen, that's number one. And number two, what happens now when you have all public servants and all offices and the business of government and the bureaucracy and the administrator running the country effectively being open, which ethically you could argue you have to make it available to all citizens, otherwise, that has its own set of problems. Whereas the private sector is still a bit more open than before.
Yes, 75% capacity.
But the employees all have to be vaccinated if they want to work.
Now, what has always conflicted me initially with the safe zone, because my initial thing was it's a good idea because it's an incentive for people to go get vaccinated. That seems to have not worked up till this point. So you can't continue.
We can't say that. Some of the vaccination numbers would have probably been given that psychological push.
Could we link it?
Not completely, but we did have a reasonable amount. Like the vaccination continued when the season policies.
Fine, fair enough.
They've trickled to a halt now.
Not by a great margin, but okay, fine.
Much more than we have now.
Initially I said, yes, it's a good idea, it's an incentive, and that needs to be done and whatnot. And then I realized it's just not making any sense, because from the time we reopened beaches, which, mind you, is an open area, and in itself is a public gathering, which is why I'm confused. What is the definition of a public gathering? Because contact sports is now allowed.
Yes.
So what is the definition of a public gathering?
So at this point, not a lot of people gather in more than 25 people in public, except for one main activity that we brought up last week, and that would actually be in large-scale protests. That's one of the main ones you could argue. Now,
you could gather in groups of 25, space yourself out 6 feet, and make sure there are gaps in between groups. But I'm not telling you to go out and protest.
No, I don't.
I'm not telling you to go out and protest.
Don't be an AG. I mean, a smart man. I mean, don't do that. Now, I'm going to say this. I was not against the public health regulations saying, no, we can't protest at the height of the pandemic. And then somewhere around the end of last year, we got into the gray area of, is this over or is this continuing? And you do want to err on the side of caution. But now, we are inconsistent with how we're treating to this thing. Granted, it's not that simple. Hong Kong just a couple of weeks ago went on lockdown. It was somewhat crazy to hear a city going under lockdown and rising cases. And I saw a video of old people on hospital beds basically next to the street because they ran out of space. So, you know, it's not that simple. However, we've gone through a fair amount of COVID. We have half of the population vaccinated. You could argue a significant chunk of the remaining unvaccinated have probably been infected. How much we can't say. But given the fact that the numbers are going down, it's a reasonable sign. What is the justification to continue with measures?
Right, so the safe zones, again, go back. If we are going to the groceries as freely as we are right now, if we're going to the beach as freely as we are right now, I mean,
if we're going to licensing office
as freely as we are right now,
or Board of Inland Revenue,
and
etc.,
I just like to say, at licensing office, I went a couple weeks ago. Efficiency of the service was excellent. I was amazed. But a lot of the workers there, including the security officers who are checking you to see if you're wearing your mask properly, were not wearing their mask. So I'm simply stating, if that is the case, the safe zone policies do not make sense anymore. Again, think about it, right? We all want to be safe and we all want to enjoy our life. We all want to get back to a sense of normalcy. But arguably, if you look at how things are right now, it simply is not cohesive in terms of all the measures that are in place. And it just simply relates to nonsense. Somebody explains to me why that's still in place.
So let's make it clear. It's not the fact that they want to phase the reopening and they should still be restrictions, because you could make that argument. Let's not completely just do away with everything and free up now. The problem is the way how they've done it has been inconsistent enough that it doesn't make complete sense. Makes a little bit of sense, but then it doesn't really. And the way how they communicated a lot of these things, you do wonder. We went through a whole series of protests and then using tear gas on protesters and counterclaims of who instigated what in the savannah. A couple of weeks of protests, a lot of talk in the national media, parliament, etc.
Now,
to basically just say, well, all right, we'll reopen it.
Well, back to another point I'd like to make, because the public sector workplace policy is another thing. I think it's now, it was foolish of me to believe.
Long.
It was just foolish of me to believe that was going to happen.
And so now we do have to wonder, did they just string it out because they didn't actually want to go through with it?
Or is it that
they just took so long and they gave up in the end?
Or is it that the lawyers who advised Adrian Schoon were the ones who were actually writing the legislation and they realized, wait, hold on, this is not going to work.
Or the one that told him that he could have the party and advertise it as a party, but he didn't have a party.
I don't want to be too facetious about this. The other part that has me a bit confused is that this announcement came right after Carnival. Right after all those Carnival events took place, this announcement came when you had unauthorized street parties, when you had individuals such as this water park in Chaguaramas. If you saw what took place there, but then individuals being shut down for
you had the police, and maybe the police are overstretched, but the long and short is, you're going to change the rules just after potentially charging people?
So you have that, and then I'm wondering now.
I would like to know what's happening to those people who potentially were charged.
I'm now wondering whether or not the government did this in terms of the time that they did it, because let's just say that after all these events that took place over Carnival, authorized and unauthorized, let's just say there is a spike in COVID-19 cases.
Yeah, okay.
Is the government going to now make the argument, well, it's because we eased the restrictions to the extent that we did?
Well, so let's play devil's advocate, right? You could say the government is being too reactionary. Now, to some extent, with COVID, everybody's reactionary, right? The only people who are not going in with a plan are the ones who managed to kind of like be late to the game, and they were able to learn everything from people before them as regards to the different stages. We started off that way, but ironically, once we became successful, we didn't really have anybody to tell us what to do next. And we dropped the ball because somebody did not secure the borders, and that's all I'll say about that. However, devil's advocate, I don't necessarily have a problem reopening now, reopening right after Carnival. I don't have a problem with them switching directions in what might be a snap decision because they realize these trends are holding, so maybe we can't do it. But the way how they are managing the expectations and communicating from, say, September last year, when schools became a bigger issue, and they had an inability to really, because some of those decisions just did not seem to make sense, right? And it seems as though we were hearing that the unions were using COVID as a leverage to try to get more pay. So some of those decisions seem to be very political with regards to their negotiations, with regards to unreasonable demands, with regards to a whole host of other factors that did not really have to do with responsible public health measures because they were just too inconsistent.
But this is what I'm saying, like, we're being devil's advocate.
But all that to say,
this is why
the snap decision, I'm not going to be 100% negative against it.
This is why I've questioned the timing. Again, when is the right time to do this? Or when would have been the right time to do this?
I mean...
And that's why I'm questioning, after Carnival, right up after the uproar.
Right, so to be fair, say they got it wrong, and they realize, listen, we could continue to get it wrong, or we could make this decision now and start to open things back up. Which means the only thing I really have to question is, to what extent do we really need safe zones for the private sector? And what businesses cannot reopen still?
So the other point I wanted to make in relation, since we're being devil's advocates in terms of the timing, right after Carnival, with the public expressing a lot of, well, unfortunately, this is not consistent. Bars and restaurants have to operate in a safe zone, but we see all these things taking place. We're not even sure if there was a party that was a safe zone.
We saw a bar somewhere in the east where potentially, they were drinking in the bar. It was open to the streets, and a police station was right next to the bar.
Right. And that also took place in San Fernando, by the way. They come from San Fernando.
So we have more than one spot.
Right? Yeah. Okay, great. So the other part...
Oh, this was before safe zones, by the way.
How much of a distraction is this announcement on Friday, since we're being devil's advocate, not only to the events of Carnival, but also to the unfortunate accident? Do you think this is taking away some sort of publicity from that accident?
No, I don't think, ironically, I would not say so. I won't think this is an effective tool to distract because the writings on the wall, the restrictions were easing up as we went along. And Carnival is over. If this happened before Carnival, the timing, of course, did not account for that. If this happened before Carnival, maybe I might think that, but the impact of this announcement, it's delayed. Primary school students are not going back until term 3. I honestly, I don't think so. If anything, it removes issues for the average citizen off of their plates, and now they could focus on what issues remain, which includes what's going on with the accidents.
And finally, Sean, there's something that we have not explored, and there's something that I haven't really heard many people explore in relation to the public sector vaccination safe zones. Now that we're trying to get things restarted in terms of having our economy, hopefully see some sort of activity that will boost income, not only for the government, but for the ordinary man on the street. This safe zone policy now, how difficult is it going to be for individuals to open up businesses? It's already difficult to establish and register a business, but in order to open it up now and operate, this is going to make it a lot more difficult than it already is.
I don't even I don't even want to know, to be honest. I just don't. But that goes back to your topic about we are returning to the back before COVID. It won't be. Even if we didn't have this situation in Ukraine, it won't be, because patterns changed, supply lines, distribution lines, trade routes have been affected, the economies and just how they work and the demand for certain goods and services have been affected. Maybe they will eventually go back to pre-pandemic levels, but to some extent, human behavior, once it has a shift, it doesn't just automatically all shift right back to what it used to be for no reason. Some people, we've discovered things about work from home. Necessity breeds creativity and invention and innovation. So certain aspects of the economy will now potentially remain. I think the banks are reducing their footprint with their physical branches, and that's just one example. Locally, there'll be multiple examples, probably hundreds, thousands internationally, and all of those things will have some sort of trickle-down effect on us here.
You mentioned banks, and you're saying that they're reducing their footprints in terms of their actual physical locations and their branches.
Most banks in Tobago only have one branch now.
Yes, but banking fees are just continuing to, well, put it this way, this taxation on the part of the banks.
We don't do anything about it as consumers.
Yes, but we also have, fair enough, because in all of this, by the way, folks, don't forget what we always preach, personal responsibility. I mean, we as citizens have a huge role to play in this as well. So let us not for a moment neglect that and try to blame everything and pass it off on government's fault and failures. We too play a significant part in the entire scenario that's at hand.
Ultimately, and this, to my final point on this, it's interesting. We always say personal responsibility, personal responsibility. You particularly have been saying it about the pandemic. That's basically what the Prime Minister said. We are moving from public health measures to personal responsibility. That is the goal of this whole thing. And to some extent, I do find it interesting, because while, yes, you could say he bullies the country, you have to argue at times, the public health measures did not get a fair chance, because we can't say for sure that the entire population adhered to the measures. So now that we're moving towards personal responsibility as it becomes an endemic, and that is the watchword, a new added watchword, I do have to ask, is this going to come back to bite us later down the line when, if this is not the end, or if there's some other pandemic that we might have to face within the next couple of years.
Please remove your goat mouth from the atmosphere.
I already got
that from the universe.
I already got mouth by 2020 part 2, because
remove that goat mouth and rescind that from the universe. Take it back. Take it back. Rebuke it.
Might get pandemic from Russia next, you never know.
See what I meant about yin and yang? Anyway, folks, let's take a break here on Talking Point. When we return, we will conclude this hour with some sad updates. Stay tuned to Talking Point.
Gift giving during a lockdown can still be hassle-free with a gift from FanZone, with delivery options available nationwide. Visit and browse our Facebook and Instagram pages for all your official licensed merchandise and apparel, and have it delivered to your door. Find us on Facebook and Instagram. FanZone, we've got you covered.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Pretend we're in darkness and you love me.
The wait is over. We Comedy Jam Season 3 is finally here.
Trinity people just give you the landmarks you don't need. On the right hand side, you'll see a standpipe. I put on this P on that standpipe.
Tell me COVID is a red girl, yes? I have no money.
Tune in to WESN Content Capital from Monday, 7th March, and every Monday from 8 p.m. to hear your favorite comedians bring you the laughs.
So from above the waist, Indian, but below the waist, still Indian. So.
That's not all. Catch us for a repeat every Thursday.
Where's a little bit of wrinkle when you're steamy, right?
We Comedy Jam, only on WESN, your content capital.
Burning questions, urgent topics. Welcome back to One on One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One on One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One on One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN Content Capital.
A reminder from WESN. We urge you to protect yourself and others from the spread of COVID-19. Stay safe by taking some simple precautions. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain a safe distance from anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Wear a mask. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay at home. If you have a fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, seek medical attention. Following the above can help us all to help each other.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN, the Content Capital. And as I informed you before, we took a break here on the program with just about 8 minutes left before we break for news on the hour. We will be recapping some sad news. Over the weekend on Saturday, the funeral of Kazim Ali Jr., one of the 4 divers who perished in the unfortunate accident that took place 2 weeks ago at Berth 6 in Pointe-a-Pierre in relation to Paria and LMCS Limited. Well, he was laid to rest on Saturday morning, and at the funeral was the lone survivor of that team, Christopher Boudram. The other funeral, another funeral, Faisal Kerman, who is the leader of the diving team, is due to take place this morning. But we do have some footage from the funeral on Saturday with Christopher Boudram in attendance. And Sean, I saw that video, and as I said, we will never ever truly understand or know what he's facing or what these families are facing, but a nation is hurting and a nation is mourning. So let's take a look at that video. Just a very, very brief moment from that funeral service on Saturday. Sean, well, it's been a week, and the conversation has not really, it's not been subdued that much. There's still been calls on the part of the opposition to ensure that report is made public. There's still call from the union to ensure that the board of Paria is removed. There's conversations all around, but as I said, putting all that politics aside, when you just take a look at that, ladies and gentlemen, is gut-wrenching.
All that politics, because we've reached a point where there's an investigation. I don't think anybody could say that we could potentially get a better team, or if you could get a better team, it would not be in a major way, it might be in a minor way. At least that is my thoughts on it. I don't care about these calls to have the board resign, because technically speaking, regardless, they should not be forced to resign or fired. No, you have to wait for the investigation. innocent until proven guilty is supposed to be the standard on something as serious as this, especially. So you could find out who is completely culpable. So the calls for it now, yes, I understand emotions are heated, but it's one thing for the family to call for it. It's another thing for union leaders and political parties, some of which don't even have a seat in parliament, to interject in this way and make a political show out of this event.
May they rest in peace. That's all.
And I just want to reiterate again, in the grand scheme of things, you know, we've had over 3,000 people die locally to COVID on top of our 500 plus murders just last year alone. I think something like 60 or 70 murders in January alone. Now there's a war globally, one of the first major wars in terms of countries going on. But this accident, it really is something else.
Ladies and gentlemen, we don't mean to be depressing, but we have to show these images. We need the nation to understand what we're facing and what we're going through. And it's not something that we could shy away from easily. But from the global perspective shown, we're now witnessing a major conflict in which territorial integrity is being, well, need I say, penetrated.
Essentially, but what's interesting is the conflict has not gone the way a lot of people predicted. And now it seems as though Ukraine has bought itself enough time. They're asking for volunteers, not just from the local population, but also abroad. And there have been a lot of stories with regards to people all over the world volunteering to go to Ukraine to fight what they believe to be an important fight. Let's take a look at a clip of some of these reports.
Volunteers queue for hours to sign up to fight for their country. Men and women of all ages and from all walks of life crowd in the recruitment building. This 37-year-old has just got his paperwork. It's the start of his new life as a Ukrainian soldier. But not everybody is as lucky as he is.
Too much people with military experience, so they select the best.
But this 45-year-old man was turned away.
No, I'm not angry. I'm disappointed. Who's going to defend my country if it's not me?
The army only recruits those who have already served in the military. For everybody else, there's the Territorial Defence Force, where they'll learn to handle weapons like these. These men won't be sent to the front line unless the front line comes to them. They'll be posted at the barricades at the entrance of towns.
I'm really happy they took me on because the TA has also stopped recruiting. I'm really lucky.
Those who don't make it into either force can still join in the fight, as the Ukrainian government moved to scrap licenses for firearms.
It's that determination that's helped inspire volunteers from much further afield to join the fight.
Ukrainian military, Zelensky, everything's been inspiring. Even like the countries surrounding, everybody's just like, it's like galvanised everybody. I've got no illusions, I've got no romantic ideas of war or like I'm going to be some hero or make a difference or any of this, but it's what I do.
I mean, you could die here.
Yeah, that's a possibility. Get wounded, which would be worse.
Nevertheless, he is ready and willing to be part of the bravest armed forces and join the International Legion of Territorial Defense, which has ballooned to 16,000 volunteers from across the globe, says President Zelensky. They arrived to defend freedom, defend life, he added. We were there as Bennett began his paperwork at the Ukrainian consulate in New York, the form advising people to be fully self-equipped with uniform, personal protection, and an explicit reminder it's on a voluntary basis. The form also asks applicants to specify your job, military combat experience. Volunteers could be chosen to go at any time and at their own expense. Bennett's hoping his willingness to learn will be enough. So why now?
I'm not married, I have no kids. So I'm getting up there in age. I'm still able-bodied.
For many American volunteers like Andrew Bennett, they have no ties to the Eastern European country, yet they feel compelled to make a difference, even as the U.S. State Department urges Americans to avoid Ukraine.
Hello, yeah, we've come to join the Ukrainian army, or whatever they're called.
Leon Dawson has no military experience, but he's joining a steady stream of civilians signing up to defend Ukraine. He's collecting second-hand military gear with his friend and says they know going to the front lines could be a deadly move.
We're young, strong, fit men. We can help, so why not?
So much going on, but we must break for news. WSN's News on the Hour. Stay tuned. When we return, we'll open up the phone lines on Talking Point, WSN Content Capital.
Seven is out, all day is in. WESN News on the Hour.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
In this season, we talk more about health, wellness, and everything in between. I am so excited to share with you everything about health and wellness so that you can design the life that you've always dreamed of. Join me here on What's Up Doc.
What's Up Doc, Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN Content Capital.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
AM Prime on WESN, the only place from 6 to 7:30 a.m. where you can get the most analytical and thorough interviews and regional reports.
The Barbados Labour Party, led by the Prime Minister Mia Amour-Motley, once again able to achieve a clean sweep in yesterday's general election.
I think a lot of people have underestimated the power of Tobago nationalism.
If the government is afraid to say it, I, Martin George, I am saying it this morning on your show, Andy, there will be no carnival before Ash Wednesday.
Grab a cup of coffee and start your day right watching AM Prime with Andy Johnson weekdays from 6 a.m. only on your content capital, WESN.
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions. The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to Talking Point, and it just goes to show that humanity, for many parts, are uniting. As you can see with many people volunteering to go abroad to fight in Ukraine, leaving their home country. One Army veteran in the United Kingdom sold his PlayStation 5 in order to buy a ticket to go to Ukraine. Anyway, folks, let's open up the phone lines now. 623-9376, 622-9338. Call in and join us on the program. Good morning, caller from Pity Valley.
Morning, Sean and Keaton.
Good morning.
In terms of the handling the pandemic, which the government opened back stuff, I will give the government 8.5 out of 10 handling the pandemic. I'll tell you why. No country in the world got it correct with the pandemic. It was new, and it catch a lot of countries with the pants down learning on the job. We are no different. To what the Prime Minister just opened, I will agree, because it is not by VAPs. Why I will say that? They took the time, everybody was clamoring for beaches to open. They went from 12 o'clock. They took the time, they went from 6. Then they reopened. Sports, what I very, very into with my son. 2 years, everybody clamoring to open sports before, which I did too. They went 2 years and then now open sports. So what I'm really saying, I think the government is doing is taking the advice from the medical team, Mr. Hines, Richards and stuff, watching numbers. I think the capacity now dropped in the ICU to 30%, and the death rates used to be 35 a day, and they drop in single digits now, and that is driving the decisions. I think the decision is not by some people saying it's just by VAPs and they not know what they're doing. I think they're carefully opening the economy, and I give them 8.5 out of 10 in handling the pandemic. That is my view this morning.
Caller, I could actually see where that is not an unreasonable statement, except I think the practical, how they handled it, I could see where you can make that argument. How they communicated the situation for the last 4 months or so, that's where you lose me. That's where they lose marks.
Well, for many moments of the pandemic, the communication has been conflicting.
No, but especially the last few months.
And that's why, caller, we don't necessarily disagree with you in relation to I don't think they did this by VAPs.
Yeah.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
But I think the communication to the public, it could have been a lot better. So handling is one thing. Communicating to the public is a completely different thing.
But I think you're on a reasonable track with the net effect of what they actually decide to do.
Yes. So we do have a call on the line from Jacob Martin. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Mr. Shah and Mr. Small.
Good morning.
This morning I want to question where the state is with respect to appearances in High Court matters. There were two recent court cases. The one with the NH-EFCL and by extension Ministry of Education, where they did not make an appearance, and NH got 18 million or something like that, and they didn't appear. The big question mark, why? Was that precedent? Was that a go-to track for people to run into. The other issue is the Rajiv Alley is very, very serious. And the state did not make an appearance. Why is that? The state has been arguing and has been changing laws and is going to Parliament and removing the special majority for the Bail Act. You have an opportunity now to argue why the gentleman should not get bail based on the anti-gang legislation, and you fail to make an appearance. Is everybody under quarantine as the Attorney General and nobody knows what's going on? I mean, that it is so laughable and facetious that you're always knocking and saying your legislative agenda going to be such that we're going to see benefits, and we're not seeing no benefits. We are seeing failures in the state, and that is based on the chest of the cabinet. The two most important people in the cabinet are the AG and the Prime Minister. The other thing is the police commissioner. You know what he uses now? Discretionary methods. Is he in control of who to lock up and not to lock up? Is the law designed such that he uses discretion and not the judiciary? Because all the bail confusion now is to give back the judiciary a discretion if to or not to give bail based on the argument. So if you lock up a person and the DPP was involved, after 4 years, you're telling me the DPP can't make an argument based on the evidence he has? Or is all of these charges are facetious and null and void? Because after 4 years, you can't go and make an appearance and argue. I'll go and have a nice
day, caller. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, caller.
Good morning, caller from Shigonas.
Hello?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, Professor.
With all these inquiries going on, I'm a bit confused. When I was in the public service, anything go on, the people on site start an inquiry one time. They don't wait for the minister. In fact, by the time the minister or the permanent secretary asks for a report, we already have an interim report we could send. Another thing bothered me is this incident with the Coast Guard, this latest one. As far as I know, on any ship, anything go wrong, the captain logs it. Why it is, when people trying to find out what is going on, why they don't just find out what is on the captain log on the incident? Any questions, gentlemen, or as usual?
Did you have a good weekend?
I always have a good weekend.
Good. Excellent.
Not as good as if you had your program going on over the weekend.
Well, we appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Have a good one.
Okay, gentlemen. Bye.
Thank you. I think with regards to your first point, Professor, I just think that's the way how politics is. Unfortunately, because I do see the frustration or the point of those who are frustrated with why do we need a special investigator and a special prosecutor and a special committee and a joint select this and a temporary that just to investigate this. Do we not have the management functions in place to see to these high-profile situations? And the answer usually is the public perception and the politics demands no.
I do have a comment to make in relation to the Grenada incident and our TT Coast Guard, but I will do so after this call from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Hi, morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I just want to kind of move away from your main topic there for a minute.
Sure.
Oil skyrocketed to $140 a barrel this morning. And
Sorry, to how much?
$140 per barrel.
I saw 130 at the beginning and then 125.
Right.
But yeah,
I just watching the New York Stock Exchange here. $140 a barrel. Trinidad production, in terms of that, is a windfall for them. But how much is a windfall when we have to come back and buy back gas and diesel to bring back in the country? Right? That's the first point. Secondly, one report on the newspaper stated that oil was in the line when the divers went down into the line. I would think that if you're working on a line, it shouldn't be live and there shouldn't be anything in the line like that.
Right,
especially if you're doing welding. So that's another concern I have. The third point is this bail issue for these guys and them. Dana Sitahal, name has been forgotten.
Yes.
And people forget who this lady was and what her position was and what her duties were. And so in a serious situation like that, which is generally considered an assassination, this was not normal, this is an assassination. And now we have bail being given to a group of gentlemen who are going to, based on your previous caller there, in terms of the discretion of the judge or whoever, to say, let's give these guys bail. Now, I believe they have to be proven guilty, innocent until proven guilty, but it have some situations you can't just allow people to go back out on the street. Because you don't know what the resources of these guys is, and even if they surrender their passport, it don't take 15, 20 minutes or half an hour to get to the mainland and go about your business, So people need to understand how this thing working and why is it that this group of gentlemen have promoted to get bail. So I mean, we have so many things in the country that are happening here, and sometimes it's hard to find a good piece of news in between. But really, it's so much concern. The last thing I want to say, maybe the pulling back of all these regulations concerning COVID, one of the influences maybe, and I just say maybe, the Prime Minister just passed through England, Europe to get to Doha, wherever he went, Qatar, wherever. And he must see how they're handling situations and how they have been dealing with COVID in those places, which may have influenced some of the decision making to come back and push back some of these regulations. And I am seeing this morning that while it may be good, there are some things here that we should have waited till 2 weeks after this Easter Carnival thing to see if cases going up. Because yes, this weekend you had 12 deaths. So the death count started to move back into the double figures. So I don't know if people are observing these things and watching these things, but I trust that you guys stay on the ball and you do a good job. God bless you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, caller. You have a good day. Thank you for your points. Good morning, caller from Digo Martin.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning, sir.
Morning.
Well, I trust that you guys had a good weekend.
We had a good weekend.
Yeah, it was all right, yeah.
I just called to make 2 small points. I wouldn't rate the government on the COVID business, but I would say they did a fairly good job, and we are thankful for it. Also, listen to the opposition made some noises there, and I tend to agree to them in a certain way concerning the board, and I think they should be given a hearing on that, because there are a lot of question marks there.
Yeah.
And there's those 2 points I thought mention, and trust that you have a good day, both of you all and the members of the team there.
Thank you very much,
Good
caller.
morning.
Always good hearing from you. Have a good day. Good morning, caller from Tobago. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Hi, good morning.
Morning,
We're doing well. How are you doing?
Very, very good. Trust you gentlemen had a very good weekend.
It was good.
You're both looking fresh and smart this morning.
I don't know how fresh I look.
Take the compliments. Thank you, caller.
The first being on the COVID situation. I don't think that Trinidad and Tobago handled the COVID situation any differently than the rest of the world did. All nations seemingly were marching to the tune of the WHO and the CDC and the FDA. So they were all taking those instructions, and no one was trying to go outside the box and do anything differently. But in regards to the safe zones, however, I think it's time to dezone the safe zones. I don't think they were effective at all. The very mention of a safe zone reeked of apartheidism, reeked of Jim Crowism. It's always a bad idea when you have this type of separation, and there's always some sort of plausible reason as to why we should segregate people. I think it was just a bad idea to attempt that to begin with, and it's time to get rid of it. A lot of the businesses are saying it's not effective because everyone is not following the safe zone policies, and certain businesses feel as though, I've heard from them, that they are being extra scrutinized when it comes to safe zones. So it's always a bad idea. In regard to bail is not, it's not a sentence, and so while you have bailable offenses where your attorney can argue for bail for you, should not be automatic.
Yeah.
It should be left up to the discretion of the judge charges and the reason given for the bail. So even if you have a bailable offense, if it is deemed and argued correctly that that person might be a flight risk, for instance, they have so much money, they have a yacht waiting, they have a private plane, and all these sorts of things, it could be argued that that person being a flight risk ought not to be granted bail depending on the circumstances, murder or an extreme crime or something of that nature. So bail should not be automatic, but it should be something where the judge has discretion whether it should be granted or not. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you, caller.
Good morning, caller from Nahawk is here.
Good morning,
Caller, you're live. Listen.
And have a blessed day.
Morning.
Both of you all. And may the Lord give all a long life, health, and strength.
Thank you.
I just called to just say something. If you have a tree and the root bad, the fruit will be bad, right? They won't produce good things. The Prime Minister, when he was in opposition, he talked about transparency, march up and down with the trade union and them. Now we get in power. We ain't seeing that at all. With the accident, let us hope and pray for the best.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, caller. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Good morning, caller from Aruka.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Sean and Mr. Keaton.
Good morning.
I'm going to think I'll just train songs for you this morning.
Sorry?
I'm going to think I'll just train songs for you this morning.
Bring it.
We're listening.
I stand up and I hear me neighbor this morning giving she daughter a very strict warning. To go to school, media, you got to travel far. If the bus break down and you're taking a motor car. Last week one got raped and killed in the cane. 2 days later, next one got raped again. So now I putting this thing in your head. So the police will get information if you in there. Anytime you hear that your school over and you get a job with a motor car, take the number, yeah. Take the number. Whether it's Master Cole or Mark 2, darling, one thing I beg you to do. Take the number. Carol, take the number. Well, she said, darling, look your boss fear. Take what I tell you and don't break stick in your hair. No matter how stupid me advise my song. As a matter, I don't want to see you go wrong. Friend, that's carry you go there, don't bring you back. Take what I tell you and believe it's a fact. I'm talking to you, you're sucking your teeth. But it's who in the kitchen that's feel the heat. Anytime you hear that your school over and you get a job with a motor car, take the number, darling. Take the number. Good morning, sir. Bye-bye, sir.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I don't know if the caller composed that himself, but the message. All right. Okay.
No,
good.
okay.
I'm glad. I'm glad for clarifying that. Thank you very much, our director. Because the message in that particular song is more than ever is applicable to the situation.
It reminded me of something.
It reminded me of something too, and that's why I'm saying more than ever it's applicable.
I think you wanted to. Now that we seem to have a moment, you want to make a point?
In relation to the Grenada situation.
Yes.
According to, I'm not sure how much of the captain's log will come into play after that particular incident, because they were already within Trinidad and Tobago waters. The Coast Guard took them to the facility, and apparently they were beaten. The captain was beaten and whatnot. But when the Coast Guard first actually intervened and boarded the boat while they were still out in the open water, it's being stated by the captain that one of the individuals, and this is from a GBN report, Grenada Broadcasting Network, this is from reports, look at how y'all treated the Venezuelan, look at how y'all shoot and kill the Venezuelan baby. We don't want that happening to us, because the Coast Guard was pointing a gun at them apparently. And he's stating that those comments alone caused them to get the treatment in which they did. There's a serious incident which has not been highlighted much, but we will highlight it later on in the program, because the story in itself is, well, we'll share that with you in another program. But good morning, caller.
Yes, morning, gentlemen. How are you today?
We're doing well. We hope you're doing well.
Great, man. Just quick thing here. Reading the Sunday Express yesterday about these government-appointed committees, and I'm not talking political here. It could be any government.
Yes.
But we have had recently and lately in the last 2 years or so, and even before that, WASA committee, a 10-member committee to evaluate bids for the Petrotrin refinery.
Yes.
The COVID investigative committee, 20 members.
Yes.
The blackout committee, remember that island-wide blackout. And now we have the diving investigative committee. Now, I would assume quite, clearly, these guys, or these professionals, must be paid and professional fees. And shouldn't the public know the kind of money that would be spent for these committees?
Yes.
Yeah.
In terms of payment, I mean, it may not be direct payment one-to-one. In other words, we're going to allocate $10 million for this investigative committee. $200,000. I think the public should know. I do.
What stipend they receive?
You guys would agree with me on that.
Yeah. No. I agree with you, and I said so from the beginning, especially
things need to be open.
Especially in relation to the Roadmap to Recovery Committee. That's when I first stated it. What's the stipend they're receiving? What is the remuneration that they're receiving?
But we brought up this topic last week also with some of these committees. What about the actual reports?
Yeah.
We don't know what came out of it.
Because I don't think interministerial committees will receive anything extra. Well, I hope not. But Colin, you raised a very valuable point.
Yes.
Yes, I believe taxpayers should know because these are not private committees. These are nationally posted committees. I think the public should know, and I'm not saying directly, well, this guy is going to get 2 million or 400 or 10,000, but what cost would be allocated for the committee?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kola. Valuable point.
It matters because back to Professor's point, do we really always need these committees? Some of these things, don't we already pay someone to be doing these things already in the organization? This is extra.
I think what it is in relation to that, it's the independence. Yes, they're within the organization. I think that's what people want. They want independence.
Okay.
But I, to myself, have always questioned, and I'm not speaking particularly with this diving report committee. I'm speaking generally.
In general, yes.
How independent is a committee if they're appointed by a minister or by any extension of the government?
But when you look at it, the way how our government is, do you think if we made it bipartisan, it will actually get done the way how Parliament runs? No, that's the practical reality. That is the context that our two parties has contributed to, so we're kind of stuck in an imperfect system because of our own actions.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, sorry?
No. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying that's the time that we have now. We want to thank all the callers for their contribution, and we do know the phone lines are going off, but that's all the time we have on Talking Point this morning. But thank you very much nonetheless. And if you are calling in now, please call in tomorrow.
So, folks, I'd just like to remind you with regards to the situation in Paria, yes, emotions are hot, but if the board is fired now, everybody will point to that as proof. Well, they only fired them if they knew they did something wrong. Let's wait for the investigation and see what happens now. After the investigation takes place, then we will have a better understanding. Well, hopefully we'll have a better understanding. Any negligence took place or any sort of criminal activity to any degree will take place, and then we can make a decision. My opinion is that we cannot remove them right now. You suspend them from operations until the report is delivered in 45 days' time, and then we proceed, whether or not they're reinstated in terms of their daily activities and duties, or whether or not they are terminated their contracts. But one thing though, a caller brought it up, we've forgotten Dana Caesar Hall. We've forgotten even recent, the Police Service Commission and the merit list. But Singing Point reminded me, we've forgotten about our murdered women as well.
That's exactly what I was referring to.
Let's not forget about these things, people, please.
Singing Point brought up a very valuable point, and listen to the words of those songs. Anyway, folks, as we always preach in your daily endeavors, please stay safe and keep well. Personal responsibility, no matter what you do and how you conduct yourself. Take some level of pride, have maturity, take responsibility, be responsible. Not for yourself, not just for yourself, but for Trinidad and Tobago as a whole. Sean Michael Small, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Keaton. I guess that's it for one more Monday. The wheel's still spinning.
And on Talking Point tomorrow, we'll be having a very special edition of the program. So tune in with us tomorrow as we celebrate International Women's Day. And then for all those who called in today and didn't get the opportunity, well, we await your call tomorrow. But for now, Sean and I will see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.